What is one of the single biggest mistakes that many parents make during their baby's doctor visits that could be absolutely devastating, but at the same time is 100% preventable? Give me a few minutes of your time, and we'll cover all this and more on this episode of White Coat Wisdom. Let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a very important topic to talk about today. Now, before we get into it, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification bell. We're just getting started, and your support really helps us keep making these videos. And if you find some information to be useful, please share this video with a close friend or family member, or with someone who cares about their health as much as you do. All right. Let's get on to it. First of all, this is a rule that applies 100% of the time, with no exceptions. A fall from the exam table during a doctor's appointment is entirely preventable and is a situation of such high acuity, medically meaning potential for bodily injury and therefore importance, that it should never occur. Not even once. Sounds obvious, right? In the real world, apparently not so much. An assumption I've seen on many occasions over the years is that the parent relies on the conscientiousness of the provider and medical staff to ensure that the child is secure. After all, the doctor's job is to ensure the health and well-being of the child, right? This is the incorrect way to approach this situation. It is not prudent to ever operate on assumption whenever dealing with a young child's health and safety. Doctors, nurses, and other medical staff are often focused on many tasks, either at once or in succession. A parent should never assume that a medical staff member will have the presence of mind to prevent the child from taking a fall at all times. Usually, parents will remain by the child's side as the family waits for the doctor to enter the room. The greatest moments of risk occur once the doctor has entered the room, and then it becomes a question of how much control the parents relinquish as the provider dictates the course of the visit. Do not leave your child unattended when medical staff members turn away from the exam table to wash their hands or put on gloves. Do not leave your child when staff members discuss medical details with you or show you growth charts. In fact, do not leave your child at any time during the entirety of the exam. The typical circumstance for this discussion is the exam room table or bench, but there often are other pertinent occasions wherein constant supervision should be maintained as well. This can include chairs or countertops or other positions of height. Perhaps the most urgent time that a parent must maintain constant supervision over a child is if, and when, the child has climbed onto a doctor's rolling stool. Kids love rolling stools. It's almost an obsession. Kids find all sorts of creative ways to make use of the doctor's rolling stool. They'll spin the stool, they'll put toys on the stool surface, and then swivel the stool until the toys go flying off. They'll lie on their bellies over the stool and push with their feet to propel themselves, whirling all around the room. If I had to pick two items that every child almost universally gravitates towards during a visit to the doctor's office, it's medical gloves and, you know it, the doctor's rolling stool. None of the merrymaking behavior just described seems very threatening. And, in fact, it isn't. But there are a few activities that involve a doctor's rolling stool that can start to get reckless and become quite dangerous very quickly. One frequent position of high risk is when a child sits on the stool. Sitting on a rolling stool represents a considerably greater risk of falling than lying on it. To compound the issue, the act of falling in these cases is invariably backwards. If a third party doesn't intervene, the child has almost no chance of catching himself and avoiding a head collision of some sort. This happens to children of all ages. Another frequent position of significant risk occurs when a child decides to stand on a rolling stool to lean over the counter and wash their hands. An endeavor like this would be substantially more safely executed if the platform on which the child is standing did not have wheels. The problem, at least as far as it seems to be from the perspective of a child, is that chairs without wheels are difficult to maneuver all the way to the countertop, and therefore, the rolling stool is favored. There are several other important points to consider when accounting for your child's place and position in a medical office. Always be cognizant of a toddler's or young child's posture during the exam. This is important even if the child appears to be safely secured on a parent's lap or in the parent's arms. Young, crying children will sometimes lean, or at other times buck, against the examiner. This is usually fine, as an experienced provider should be more than capable of delivering a quality exam while also helping to gently secure an uncooperative young patient. But there can be the rare instance of a child bucking at just the right moment that the physician completes a portion of his or her exam and lets go of the child in transition. This could lead to an accidental fall if the parent hasn't properly braced for this moment. This principle applies to more than just during the physical exam portion of the medical visit. Parents must remember to properly brace whenever they're involved in holding or restraining their children during medical interventions. Typical interventions can include vaccine administration, as well as diagnostic testing procedures that involve poking or swabbing. Parents generally like to be part of the process whenever a somewhat invasive medical intervention is being done for a young child. It's a good idea, and it makes sense for several reasons. Firstly, kids who are scared because medical personnel are approaching them with sharp needles or long Q-tip swabs usually prefer to stay close to their parents or other close family members. Reciprocally, parents often naturally want to remain close to their children during these moments of angst. Secondly, holding a child against their will, which is customarily the circumstance when the child is receiving a vaccine, places the child in a decidedly vulnerable position. One can argue that the parent is the most appropriate party to apply this restraint, given that it demands such physical closeness. Many parents would agree with this. Thirdly, the parent is the person in the room most heavily invested in the child. This is pertinent because it means that the child is least likely to be injured during the process of the physical restraining, as opposed to, say, an overzealous healthcare provider. Having a parent be the one to hold the child gives the parent, and perhaps also the child, a level of comfort that the child won't be inadvertently bruised or otherwise harmed while being restrained. However, it is crucial that parents make sure in these situations to maintain a firm hold until the medical intervention is complete. One of the worst things that can happen during a child's immunization process occurs if the holder of the child does not maintain sufficient immobilization and the child flails while in the midst of receiving his or her shot. You can imagine the potentially horrific complications that could result from something like this. It is additionally very important to never underestimate how quickly children can move. Through the years, you hear stories about things that kids pick up off the ground. Some of the stories are funny, but some are graver and are not funny at all. Children can be very quick, especially when they see things that interest them. Everyone be aware that in many cases, the action of the child is too quick for the adult to properly react. Additionally, it is also important not to underestimate the range that can be within a child's reach. Children are adept at squirming, wiggling, and posturing to extend their reach, even when properly restrained in safety harnesses. Children will pick up all sorts of things. Remember that a lot of these items include objects that adults are already conditioned to automatically ignore. A mother might go for a morning walk with her toddler in a sit-up stroller. As they come up to an acquaintance, the mother stops to say hi. Unbeknownst to her, the child has reached out and grabbed a piece of dog feces. Even worse, when the child notices the look of astonishment on his mother's face as she realizes what is happening, the child hurriedly pops the poop in his mouth so that she can't take away this cool new thing he's found. On a darker note, my office once had a child that was walking through a parking lot to the store with her father when she noticed something shiny on the cement ground. She crouched down out of curiosity to pick the item up, only to find that the item was a medical needle. Medical staff have strict protocols on the proper use and disposal of medical needles. Unfortunately, on the streets with illicit drug users, no such rules apply. This particular needle pricked her finger, surprising her and causing her to drop it back to the ground. As you might imagine, the case was significantly more complicated than a simple puncture wound. Although the wound was only superficial, the offending agent appeared to unfortunately be a used needle. And this represented a major problem, because the prior user of the needle could have been with anyone, a drug user or an individual with a life-changing blood-borne disease, such as HIV or hepatitis C. The emotional ordeal and potential subsequent health implications far outweighed the gravity of the initial wound itself. Thankfully, this child turned out to be okay, despite the scare. Although, she did have to undergo several rounds of testing to make sure. On a related note regarding child safety while in the office setting, don't allow your child to stand or play directly behind doors, including the exam room door. Again, parents, it might be surprising that this is even a point worth mentioning, but it happens much more frequently than you might think. It is common courtesy to knock before opening a closed door to enter a room, but we all know that this doesn't always happen in everyday life. To summarize, always remain vigilant about your child's position and placement throughout your visit at the medical office. Falls and other related injuries can and should be entirely preventable. The salient points are: 1. Never leave your infant or young child unattended on the exam table. 2. Be careful if your child is on the doctor's rolling stool. 3. Always properly brace when holding or restraining a young child for medical purposes. 4. Never underestimate a child's quickness and reach. If you found this episode helpful, check out our other videos packed with real-world clinical insights. And if you haven't already, click here to check out our previous video that covers all the potential hidden dangers of a medical office that you should be trying to avoid. We're board-certified medical providers with over 30 years of combined experience, sharing the pearls, caveats, and hard-won lessons that only come from caring for real people, not just studying the books. Thanks for joining us here at White Coat Wisdom, where clinical experience meets everyday life. If you found today's insights helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who cares about their health as much as you do. Your support helps us keep bringing trusted, real-world medical guidance straight to you. See you in the next one. Until next time, everyone stay safe and stay healthy.